Nostalgia. Hello everybody, Tom here. Hope you're well. I want to talk today about nostalgia. Nostalgia and how we sometimes look back at the past with rose tinted glasses. I think most of us are guilty of this. If we go back to times when we were younger, when I say younger, when we were children, you'd always hear the elderly people or elderly relatives in your family talk about how things were so much better when they were young. And in a way, it's like a fantasy to believe that. But in some ways, what we must understand is it's all based upon somebody's perception of how their reality is. And I will elaborate on this, okay? So, for me, as a growing adult, I look back at my childhood and think I've had it quite lucky, really. And I have. I certainly didn't do without. I was not in a rich family, not at all. But for the most part, we had a pretty good childhood. There will be others that have lived before me. My parents, aunts, uncles. I have friends that are slightly older than me as well who would say that they lived in better times than what I did. And then if you go back to, say, grandparents' time, they would say that times were so much better when they were younger. Are we seeing a theme developing here? Every generation will be transfixed on their time that they were young, and they will describe it as a better time than the ones we're currently living in. And in some ways, I agree. Because having now a perception of seeing how things are in the world and how people are being brought up and how this next generation's got all these things to deal with, I can 100% relate. However, is there an element of exaggeration about just how good things were or weren't? I think so. I think we do sometimes look at the past with rose tinted glasses. And this can be in many ways. We can exaggerate, embellish. We can make things sound better than what they actually were. And the reason for that is, as I said, it's our own take on how things were. Because, people will talk about decades gone by, and some will say, oh yeah, it was a great time to be alive. Then other people will say, actually, it wasn't a great time to be alive. So the point I'm trying to make here today is next time somebody older than you tells you about how much better it was when they were young, let there be a wry smile appear on your face. At the end of the day, you will never fully understand because you weren't there. All you've got is that person's perception and opinion on events. Okay? For myself, I can honestly say, hand on heart, I wouldn't want to be a youth at the moment, a teenager growing up in the times that we're living in. However, at the same time, these people have known no different than this. So their generational take on things, their experience is way different to what I went through growing up. And it will be a lot different to the same as what my mum and dad went through, and possibly my grandparents as well. Everything is relative to this romanticised idea that times was always better. It's in the song Wear Sunscreen by Baz Luhrmann. When you get older, you will fantasise that people respected their elders, politicians were noble, and prices were reasonable. I can honestly tell you that of the two of those three things, 100% is not true. Prices are not reasonable and never have been. It's always been expensive for the working man because everything's relative. Politicians being noble, never ever have I heard so much rubbish in all my life. Politicians have never been noble. It doesn't go with the territory to be in that position, to be a noble and honourable individual, I'm afraid. Again, I can't speak for every politician that's ever lived, but in my experience, those two things can never be true, or are never likely to be true. So, It's just a couple of examples of how we look back at the past with such romanticism and fantasize about how much better it was, when really we can only say from our own stance and our own viewpoint that the past was this and that, because everybody's take's different. If somebody older was living around the time that you grew up, they probably have a very different take on life due to their experience. Remember, guys, we can paint an illusion as to how things are because it is our take at the end of the day and our take only. Be wary of that. This is my first of 3 videos this week. I want to say thank you all ever so much for listening. I really appreciate your time and energy spent here on my channel. Thank you kindly. First of 3, as I said, please put down in the comment section below, what do you believe about nostalgia? Is nostalgia a good thing, a bad thing? Is it something that we manipulate to sound better? Or is it something that actually we can only go off our own experience by? Because to me, if you've not lived in that time, if you've not gone through that experience, then you can't turn around and say, it's this, it's that. You can only go through what you've read and what other people have told you. Example, in the war, when my grandparents were young, I can't say what it was like to live in that time because I didn't live in that time. What I can do is draw upon what they've told me and what I've read as to how life was like. But not having the lived experience, I cannot say for like in my hand on my heart how it was or how it wasn't, because I wasn't around that time. And it's a very big trap that we all get into sometimes, perhaps perceiving things differently to what they were. Please, if you would, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. I'd be really grateful. If you would as well, consider giving me a thumbs up and like, that'd be really great. And let's hear that bell sign go ding dong so you know my next content's out. I will be back in a couple of days with another video, but until then, please take care of yourselves and bye for now.